A millionaire was in a hurry to go to a luxury restaurant and bumped into a cleaner, but when the girl looked at him, she was left speechless. In the heart of New York City, the bustling metropolis known for its towering skyscrapers and endless opportunities, stood the elegant restaurant The Gilded Rose. It was a place where the rich and powerful gathered to close million-dollar deals or simply to see and be seen. However, on that May evening, fate had prepared an encounter that would forever change the lives of two people who, at first glance, couldn't be more different. Alexander Blackwell, a 35-year-old entrepreneur and owner of one of the most important real estate development companies in the United States, entered the restaurant with a confident and elegant stride. His tailored suit and distinguished bearing spoke of a life of privilege and success. But behind that facade of security, Alexander hid a lonely heart and a deep yearning to find something more meaningful than money and power. Meanwhile, in the restaurant's kitchen, Sofia Martinez, a 28-year-old woman, was hurrying to finish her shift as a cleaning staff member. With her simple uniform and her hair tied back in a ponytail, Sofia went unnoticed by most of the clients. However, her bright eyes and warm smile revealed an inner beauty that few took the time to appreciate. That night, fate decided to play its cards. As Alexander waited for some business partners for a dinner meeting, a waiter stumbled, spilling a tray of drinks on the table. Amid the chaos, Sofia quickly came to clean up the mess. It was then that their eyes met for the first time. Alexander, surprised by the grace and efficiency with which Sofia handled the situation, couldn't help but notice her. For her part, Sofia, accustomed to being invisible to customers, felt disconcerted by the intensity of the elegant man's gaze. "Thank you," Alexander said with a voice that denoted sincere gratitude. "You've saved the situation." Sofia, blushing, responded shyly, "It's nothing, sir. It's my job." But they both knew that something had changed in that brief instant. A spark had been ignited, an inexplicable connection that would leave them thinking about each other for days. In the weeks that followed, Alexander found himself visiting the Gilded Rose more frequently than usual. He always looked for Sofia, and when he saw her, he felt an inexplicable joy. For her part, Sofia couldn't help but feel butterflies in her stomach every time the handsome entrepreneur appeared in the restaurant. Finally, after several visits and brief exchanges of words, Alexander gathered the courage to speak to Sofia, beyond cordial greetings. He found her one night as she was leaving work. "Excuse me," Alexander said, approaching with a mixture of nervousness and determination. "I know this might seem strange, but I was wondering if you'd like to have coffee with me sometime." Sofia, surprised and flattered, hesitated for a moment. She knew that a man like Alexander was out of her league, but something in his sincere gaze made her nod. "I'd love to," she replied with a shy smile. That simple yes would mark the beginning of a love story that would defy all expectations and social conventions. As they walked together to a nearby cafe, neither of them could imagine the joys, challenges, and surprises that the future held for them. The New York night enveloped them with its warm embrace, while the stars shone in the sky, silent witnesses to the birth of a love that was destined to change not only their lives, but those of many others. The following months were like a dream for Alexander and Sofia. After that first coffee, their encounters became more frequent. Walks through Central Park, visits to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to admire the masterpieces, dinners in small restaurants in the East Village. Each moment together was a revelation, a mutual discovery that brought them closer and closer. Alexander marveled at Sofia's intelligence and sensitivity. Despite not having access to formal education beyond high school, Sofia had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. She read everything she could get her hands on and had a natural ability for design, creating beautiful sketches of dresses in her spare time. For her part, Sofia discovered in Alexander a man very different from the stereotype of the cold and calculating businessman. Behind his professional success, there was a generous heart and a restless spirit that yearned to do something meaningful with his life beyond accumulating wealth. However, not everything was rosy. As their relationship became more serious, they began to face disapproval from the society that surrounded them. Alexander's family, especially his mother, Mrs. Elizabeth Blackwell, did not look kindly on the heir to Blackwell Developments, dating a simple cleaning staff member. At a family dinner in the Blackwell mansion in the Hamptons, Mrs. Blackwell could not contain her disapproval. "Alexander, darling," she said with a tense voice, "I understand you want to have fun, but don't you think it's time to settle down with someone of your class? The Sullivan girl, for example, would be an excellent choice." Alexander, feeling the blood boiling in his veins, responded firmly, "Mother, Sophia is not a pastime. I love her, and she's the woman I want to share my life with." The silence that followed this statement was deafening. Mr. Robert Blackwell, Alexander's father, looked at his son with a mixture of pride and concern, while his younger sister Emily hid an approving smile behind her wineglass. At work, things weren't much better. Rumors about Alexander's relationship with a cleaning staff member spread like wildfire in New York's business circles. Some partners began to question his judgment, fearing that this relationship could affect business. Sophia also faced her own challenges. Her co-workers at the Gilded Rose looked at her with a mixture of envy and suspicion. Some accused her of being a gold digger. Others simply couldn't believe that someone like Alexander had noticed her. One night, after a particularly difficult shift in which she had to endure hurtful comments from her colleagues, Sophia arrived crying at the small apartment she shared with her grandmother in Queens. "Abuela," she sobbed in the arms of Doña Carmen, "maybe they're all right. Maybe Alexander and I are too different. Perhaps I should let him go before he gets hurt." Doña Carmen, a wise woman who had lived long enough to recognize true love when she saw it, took her granddaughter's face in her wrinkled hands. "Listen to me well, mi niña," she said with a firm but loving voice. "True love knows no social classes or bank accounts. If that young man loves you as much as you love him, then you have to fight for what you feel. Don't let fear or people's gossip steal your happiness." Strengthened by her grandmother's words, Sophia decided not to give up. That same night, she called Alexander and asked him to meet her in Washington Square Park, their favorite place in the city. Under the shade of the iconic arch and with the sound of street musicians in the background, Sophia and Alexander had an honest conversation about their fears and hopes. They promised each other that they would fight for their love, no matter what obstacles they had to face. "I love you, Sophia," Alexander said, taking her hands in his. "I don't care what my family says or what my partners think. With you, I've discovered what really matters in life, and I'm not going to give that up." Sophia, with tears of happiness in her eyes, replied, "I love you too, Alexander. I promise to be by your side, through thick and thin. Together we can overcome anything." They sealed their promise with a passionate kiss, while the New York moon bathed them in its silver light. At that moment, they both knew that their love was stronger than any prejudice or social barrier. The following months were not easy, but Alexander and Sophia remained united. Slowly, with patience and determination, they began to change the perceptions of those around them. Alexander proved that his relationship with Sophia did not negatively affect his business. On the contrary, his personal happiness was reflected in more compassionate and effective leadership in the company. Sophia, for her part, decided to pursue her dream of becoming a fashion designer. With Alexander's unwavering support, she enrolled in night design courses at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Her natural talent, combined with her tireless work ethic, soon made her one of the most promising students. As their relationship strengthened, Alexander and Sophia began to dream of a future together. They talked about marriage, starting a family, combining their passions to create something meaningful. But fate still had some surprises in store for them, and the path to happiness would be full of unexpected twists and shocking revelations. The afternoon sun bathed the streets of Brooklyn, painting the colorful brownstones in golden hues. Alexander and Sophia walked hand in hand through Dumbo, admiring the art galleries and boutique shops. They had decided to spend the weekend exploring this trendy neighborhood, famous for its stunning views of Manhattan and its vibrant art scene. As they stopped in front of a gallery showcasing beautiful textile art, Sophia couldn't help but sigh. Her mind wandered to the designs she had been creating in her night classes, imagining how she could incorporate elements of traditional craftsmanship into her own creations. Alexander, noticing Sophia's dreamy look, gently squeezed her hand. "One day," he said with a smile, "your designs will be in the best boutiques in New York, Paris, and Milan." Sophia returned his smile, grateful for his constant support. However, a shadow of concern crossed her face. "Alexander," she said with a trembling voice, "there's something I need to tell you, something about my past." The seriousness in her tone made Alexander stop. "What is it, love?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Sophia led him to a small park nearby, where they sat on a bench overlooking the East River. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "When I was a teenager, before moving to New York with my grandmother, I lived in a small town in New Mexico. My family was very poor, and I made a mistake." Tears began to form in her eyes. "I stole money from the store where I worked to help pay for my mother's medicine when she was sick." Alexander listened in silence, his face a mask of concentration. "I got caught," Sophia continued, "and although the store owner didn't press charges when he found out why I did it, the shame was too much. That's why we moved to New York to start over." She looked at Alexander with pleading eyes. "I know I should have told you before, but I was afraid of losing you." For a moment that seemed eternal. Alexander remained silent. Then, to Sophia's surprise, he pulled her into a strong embrace. "Sophia," he said with a soft but firm voice, "we all make mistakes. What's important is what we do after them. And you've proven to be the most hard-working, honest, and compassionate person I know. I love you for who you are, with your past and everything." Sophia's tears were now of relief and gratitude. She clung to Alexander, feeling as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she felt completely free and accepted. As the sun began to set, painting the New York sky in shades of red and gold, Alexander and Sophia sealed their moment of honesty and acceptance with a tender kiss. This moment of shared vulnerability had only strengthened their bond. However, fate had more surprises in store for the couple. As they were returning to Manhattan that night, an unexpected call would change the course of their lives. Alexander's phone rang just as they were crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. It was his father, Robert Blackwell, and his voice sounded urgent and worried. "Son, I need you to come to the house immediately. Something has come up, something you need to know." Intrigued and a little worried, Alexander and Sophia headed to the Blackwell mansion on the Upper East Side. Upon arrival, they found Robert in his study, with a tired and dejected look that Alexander had never seen in his father. "Please sit down," said Robert, gesturing to the leather armchairs. Then, looking directly at Sophia, he added, "What I have to say especially concerns you, Sophia." Confused, Sophia looked at Alexander, who seemed equally perplexed. Robert took a deep breath and began to speak. "Many years ago, before I married Alexander's mother, I had a relationship with a woman in New Mexico. A relationship that ended abruptly when my family found out and forced me to return to New York." Sophia's heart began to race. Something in the story seemed unsettlingly familiar. "Recently," Robert continued, "I found out that this woman had had a daughter I never knew." His eyes filled with tears as he looked directly at Sophia. "That daughter is you, Sophia." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia felt as if the world was spinning around her. Alexander, for his part, looked alternately at his father and Sophia, trying to process the information. "But how?" Sophia finally managed to articulate. "My mother never mentioned—" "Your mother, Gabriella, was a proud woman," Robert explained. "She decided to raise you alone without telling me anything. It was only recently, when I began to inquire about my past in New Mexico, that I discovered the truth." The implications of this revelation hit Alexander like a train. Sophia, the woman he loved, was actually his half-sister. Fate seemed to be playing a cruel joke on them. "This can't be," Alexander muttered, standing up abruptly. "There must be a mistake." Sophia, still in shock, couldn't articulate a word. Tears ran freely down her cheeks as she tried to reconcile this new information with everything she believed she knew about her life. Robert, visibly affected by both of their reactions, tried to calm the situation. "I know this is a shock for both of you. Believe me, it was for me too. But I thought you had the right to know." The following days were a whirlwind of emotions for Alexander and Sophia. The news of their kinship had shaken the foundations of their relationship and their lives. They avoided each other, unable to face the reality of their situation. Sophia sank into a deep depression, locking herself in the small apartment she shared with her grandmother. Doña Carmen, who had also been taken by surprise by the revelation, did her best to console her granddaughter. Alexander, for his part, took refuge in work, spending long hours at the office of his real estate company, trying to drown his thoughts in projects and numbers. His employees noticed his change in mood, but no one dared to ask what was wrong. It was Emily, Alexander's younger sister, who finally decided to take matters into her own hands. Worried about her brother and Sophia, whom she had come to sincerely appreciate, she decided to investigate further. Hiring a private investigator and using her contacts in the state government, Emily began to unravel the story of the relationship between Robert and Sophia's mother. What she discovered would change everything once again. 2 weeks after the initial revelation, Emily called for an urgent family meeting. In the main hall of the Blackwell mansion, with Alexander, Sophia, Robert, and Elizabeth present, Emily revealed her findings. "The story Dad told us is partly true," Emily began, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "He and Sophia's mother did have a relationship, but there's more." Everyone in the room held their breath, waiting for what would come next. "According to the records I've found," Emily continued, "Sophia's mother was already pregnant when she met Dad. Sophia's real father was a man named Jack Martinez, who passed away shortly before Sophia was born." The revelation fell like a bomb in the room. Sophia felt a mixture of relief and confusion, while Alexander seemed not to know how to react. Robert, visibly shocked, stammered, "But how is this possible? Gabriella never told me." "Apparently," Emily explained, "Gabriella feared that if she told you the truth, you would walk away. She preferred to let you believe you were the father." Sophia, finding her voice for the first time in days, asked, "Then, who am I really?" Emily approached her and took her hands. "You are Sophia Martinez, the same person you've always been. A strong, talented, and loved woman. This doesn't change who you are in essence." Alexander, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Sophia," he said, his voice laden with emotion, "I love you. These last few days have been hell thinking we couldn't be together. But now—" He approached her and took her in his arms. "Now I know that our love isn't wrong, that we can be together." Sophia, between tears of relief and happiness, returned his embrace. "I love you too, Alexander, more than ever." Robert, still processing the information, approached the couple. "Sophia," he said with a broken voice, "I deeply regret all of this, although you're not my biological daughter. I want you to know that I consider you part of this family. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to be a father figure to you." Sophia, moved by his words, nodded and extended her embrace to include Robert. Elizabeth, who had observed everything in silence, finally spoke. "I believe we have all learned a valuable lesson about love, family, and prejudices," she said, approaching the group. "Sophia, I ask for your forgiveness for how I've treated you. I hope you can forgive me and give me the chance to be a true mother to you." At that moment, in the hall of the Blackwell mansion, surrounded by tears, hugs, and promises of a better future, Alexander and Sophia knew that their love had overcome the most difficult test. What fate had tried to separate was now more united than ever. As the sun set over New York City, painting the sky in warm tones, a new family was forming, a family united not by blood, but by love, understanding, and mutual acceptance. The following months were a whirlwind of emotions and changes for Alexander and Sophia. With the truth finally revealed and misunderstandings cleared, the couple dove headfirst into building their future together. Sophia, with the unconditional support of Alexander and now also the Blackwell family, continued her fashion design studies with renewed enthusiasm. Her creations, which fused elements of traditional craftsmanship with contemporary designs, began to attract attention in New York's fashion circles. One spring afternoon, as Sophia worked in her improvised workshop in one of the rooms of the Blackwell mansion, a gift from Robert, Alexander entered with a mysterious smile on his face. "I have a surprise for you," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. Intrigued, Sophia set aside the dress she was working on and followed Alexander to the garden. There, waiting for them, was a distinguished-looking older man whom Sophia immediately recognized as Thomas Hartley, one of the most respected fashion designers in America. "Miss Martinez," Hartley said, extending his hand. "I've seen your work, and I must say I'm impressed. I'd like to offer you an internship at my fashion house in Paris." Sophia was speechless. This was an opportunity she had only dreamed of. She looked at Alexander, who nodded with an encouraging smile. "It would be an honor, Mr. Hartley," Sophia finally managed to articulate. As Sophia and Hartley discussed the details of the internship, Alexander watched with pride. He knew this would mean Sophia would have to move temporarily to Paris, but he was willing to make their relationship work long distance. Sophia's success was as important to him as his own. However, fate had other plans. That same night, while celebrating the news with the Blackwell family, Alexander received a call that would change the course of their lives once again. It was Michael Chen, an old college friend, who now worked for a major international NGO. "Alexander," Michael said with an urgent voice, "we need your help. We're starting a sustainable housing project in underprivileged communities in Southeast Asia. We need someone with your construction experience and social vision to lead it. Would you be interested?" Alexander felt as if all the pieces of an invisible puzzle finally fit together. He looked at Sophia, who had been listening to the conversation, and saw in her eyes the same enthusiasm he felt. "Michael," Alexander replied, "count me in." The next few days were a frenzy of preparations. Alexander and Sophia decided to move together to Singapore, she for her internship with Thomas Hartley's Asian branch, and he to lead the sustainable housing project. The night before their departure, as they packed their things in the Blackwell mansion, Alexander suddenly stopped and looked at Sophia intensely. "Sophia," he said, taking her hands in his, "these last few months have been the happiest of my life. We've overcome so many obstacles together, and every day I fall more in love with you." He knelt in front of her and took out a small velvet box from his pocket. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" With tears of happiness in her eyes, Sophia responded without hesitation, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring, a beautiful white gold design with a central diamond surrounded by small emeralds, shone on her finger as a symbol of their love and their future together. The news of their engagement was received with joy by the Blackwell family. Even Elizabeth, who had been the most reluctant to accept Sophia at first, now embraced her as a daughter. Their new life in Singapore turned out to be more exciting and challenging than they had imagined. Sophia immersed herself in the world of haute couture, learning from Thomas Hartley and developing her own unique style. Her designs, which blended contemporary elegance with traditional Asian motifs, soon began to draw attention in the Asian fashion scene. Alexander, for his part, found himself leading a project that not only built houses, but transformed entire communities. Working closely with local leaders and sustainability experts, he developed a housing model that was not only environmentally responsible, but also culturally sensitive and economically viable for low-income families. One afternoon, as Alexander supervised the construction of a new housing complex on the outskirts of Singapore, he had an epiphany. He saw a young woman not unlike Sophia, struggling to carry construction materials while caring for her young child. That night, when he returned to the apartment he shared with Sophia, he shared his idea with her. "What do you think about combining our talents?" he asked excitedly. "We could create a line of workwear designed specifically for women in construction, something that's functional, comfortable, and at the same time makes them feel empowered." Sophia's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "It's a brilliant idea. We could use durable but lightweight materials, designs that facilitate movement." Alexander smiled, excited by Sophia's enthusiasm. "Exactly. And not only that, we could partner with women's cooperatives for production. It would be a way to create employment and empower more women in the industry." Thus was born Building Dreams, an initiative that combined Sophia's passion for fashion with Alexander's commitment to social development. In the months that followed, they worked tirelessly to make their vision a reality. Sophia designed a clothing line that was not only functional and safe for construction work, but also elegant and empowering. She used durable but breathable fabrics, incorporated safety elements such as reflectors and reinforced pockets, and added touches of color and designs inspired by local Asian craftsmanship. Alexander, for his part, used his contacts in the construction industry to promote the line and establish partnerships with construction companies and unions. He also worked on creating training programs for women interested in entering the construction industry. The launch of Building Dreams was a resounding success. The clothing line was not only well received by women construction workers, but also caught the attention of national and international media. Sophia and Alexander found themselves giving interviews to fashion magazines and television programs, sharing their vision of a more inclusive and diverse construction industry. However, success also brought its challenges. The demand for the clothing line grew rapidly, and Sophia and Alexander found themselves struggling to maintain balance between their personal and professional lives. Long working hours and stress began to take a toll on their relationship. One night, after a heated discussion about the company's expansion plans, Sophia left the apartment to get some fresh air. As she walked through the streets of Singapore's Chinatown, reflecting on how they had reached this point, she found herself in front of a small Buddhist temple. She entered, seeking a moment of peace and clarity. As she sat on one of the benches, she felt a presence beside her. Turning, she saw a kind-looking elderly monk smiling at her. "Sometimes," the monk said in a soft voice, "in the midst of success, we forget what really matters. Love, family, compassion, these are the true foundations of a fulfilling life." Sophia felt as if those words were exactly what she needed to hear. She thanked the monk and left the temple with a new determination. When she returned to the apartment, she found Alexander waiting for her with an expression of concern and regret. "I'm sorry," they both said in unison before melting into an embrace. That night, Sophia and Alexander had a long conversation about their priorities and their vision for the future. They decided that while building dreams was important, their relationship and their future family were even more crucial. In the months that followed, they implemented changes in their business and personal life. They hired a trusted team to handle the day-to-day operations of Building Dreams, which allowed them to dedicate more time to their relationship and to planning their wedding. The ceremony took place a year later in New York, in the gardens of the Blackwell Mansion. It was a celebration that combined elegance with simplicity, reflecting the essence of Alexander and Sophia. The bride wore a dress designed by herself, a masterpiece that fused traditional elements with a contemporary style. Among the guests were not only family and close friends, but also many of the women who had been impacted by Building Dreams. Doña Carmen, Sophia's grandmother, occupied a place of honor, her eyes shining with pride and happiness. During the reception, Alexander surprised everyone with a special announcement. "Sophia and I have decided to expand our family," he said, his voice full of emotion. "But not in the way everyone is thinking." He made a dramatic pause before continuing. "We have decided to adopt May, an 8-year-old girl we met in one of our housing projects in Vietnam." Sophia, with tears in her eyes, added, "May lost her parents in an accident and has been in the adoption system for 2 years. When we met her, we knew she was part of our family." The news was received with applause and tears of joy. Robert and Elizabeth were the first to embrace the couple, excited at the prospect of being grandparents. As the sun set over New York, painting the sky in golden and pink hues, Alexander and Sophia shared a dance under the stars. Looking into each other's eyes, they knew this was just the beginning of a new and exciting stage in their lives. "I love you," Alexander whispered. "And I love you," Sophia replied, "forever and always." The following years brought a series of changes and challenges for Alexander and Sophia. The adoption of May was just the beginning of their adventure as parents. The girl, initially shy and withdrawn, blossomed under the love and care of her new parents. Sophia discovered that her creativity as a designer was enriched by her experience as a mother. She began designing a children's clothing line that combined comfort, durability, and style, inspired by the needs of May and other adopted children. Alexander, for his part, focused on expanding his company's social housing programs to include specific services for adoptive and foster families. He worked closely with adoption agencies and child welfare organizations to create living spaces that facilitated the transition and rooting of children in their new families. One day, as Sophia worked in her home studio, May came running in, her eyes bright with excitement. "Mum, Mum," exclaimed the girl, waving a paper in her hand. "Look what I drew." Sophia took the drawing and looked at it with a smile. It was a family portrait: Alexander, Sophia, and May, all holding hands. But there was an additional figure, a baby in Sophia's arms. "It's beautiful, honey," said Sophia, hugging her daughter. "But who is this baby?" May looked at her mother with hopeful eyes. "It's my little brother, the one we're going to have soon, right?" Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. She and Alexander had been talking about the possibility of having a biological child, but they hadn't made a decision yet. That night, when Alexander returned from work, Sophia showed him May's drawing. "I think the universe is sending us a message," Alexander said with a smile. 9 months later, the Blackwell-Martinez family welcomed a little boy they named Ethan. May was delighted with her role as big sister, and the family felt complete in a way none of them had imagined possible. However, life had one more challenge prepared for this love-filled family. When Ethan was barely a year old, Alexander received a call that would change their lives once again. It was from an orphanage in Los Angeles, with which they had worked on one of their housing projects. They had a special case: a 6-month-old baby with Down syndrome who needed a home. Alexander and Sophia didn't hesitate for a second. 2 weeks later, they returned home with little Noah, completing their family in a way they had never imagined. The adaptation wasn't easy. Noah required special care and constant attention. May, now 12 years old, had to adjust to not being the only adopted child. Ethan, barely a baby himself, had to share his parents' attention. There were sleepless nights, days of exhaustion and moments of doubt. But there was also laughter, hugs, and a love that seemed to grow with each challenge they faced. One afternoon, as the whole family was gathered in the backyard of their home in Brooklyn, Sophia looked around and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost overwhelmed her. Alexander was playing soccer with May, their laughter resonating in the air. Ethan, now 3 years old, was building a sandcastle in the sandbox, his tongue peeking out of the corner of his mouth in concentration. And Noah, with his big brown eyes and contagious smile, was crawling on the grass, determined to reach his siblings. At that moment, Sophia knew they had created something extraordinary. Not just a family, but a living testimony that love knows no barriers, whether of social class, blood, or ability. That night, after putting the children to bed, Alexander and Sophia sat on the porch enjoying a moment of tranquility. "You know," Alexander said, taking his wife's hand, "when I met you in that restaurant, I never imagined we'd end up here." Sophia smiled, resting her head on Alexander's shoulder. "Life has a curious way of surprising us, doesn't it?" "It certainly does," Alexander replied, "and I wouldn't change it for the world." As the sun set over Brooklyn, bathing the sky in warm tones, Alexander and Sophia sat in silence, grateful for the journey that had brought them here, and excited for what the future would hold. 20 years had passed since that afternoon in the backyard. Alexander and Sophia, now in their 60s, found themselves sitting on the porch of their retirement home in the Berkshires, overlooking the lake that stretched out before them. Time had left its mark on their faces, but their eyes still shone with the same love and passion that had united them decades ago. May, now a successful 32-year-old architect, had followed in Alexander's footsteps in the family business, but with a focus on sustainable and accessible design. Ethan, 23, had become a talented fashion designer, inspired by his mother's work. And Noah, at 22, was a Paralympic athlete, preparing to compete in swimming at the upcoming Paralympic Games. Building Dreams had become an international foundation, working not only in the United States but throughout the world, providing decent housing and employment opportunities to marginalized communities. The clothing line that Sophia had started had expanded to include designs for people with diverse abilities, revolutionizing the inclusive fashion industry. That afternoon, the family was gathering to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the day Alexander and Sophia met in that New York restaurant. As they waited for their children and grandchildren to arrive, Sophia took Alexander's hand. "Remember when we thought we couldn't be together?" she asked with a nostalgic smile. Alexander nodded, gently squeezing her hand. "It seems like it was in another life." Look at all we've built together since then." At that moment, the sound of cars approaching pulled them from their memories. May was the first to arrive, with her husband David and their 5-year-old twins Emma and Olivia. Ethan arrived shortly after, accompanied by his boyfriend James. Noah was the last to arrive, straight from his training, his gold medal from the national championship shining on his chest. The house was soon filled with laughter, conversations, and the aroma of home-cooked food. Doña Carmen, Sophia's grandmother, now 105 years old, presided over the gathering from her wheelchair, her bright eyes observing the family that had grown beyond her wildest dreams. During dinner, May stood up, glass in hand. "I want to make a toast," she said, her voice laden with emotion. "To my parents, Alexander and Sophia. Your love not only gave Ethan, Noah, and me a home, but it has touched the lives of thousands of people around the world. You taught us that true love knows no limits, that family is more than blood, and that with compassion and determination, we can change the world. Thank you for being our example and our inspiration." Everyone's eyes were moist as they raised their glasses. Alexander and Sophia looked at each other, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. After dinner, while the children played in the garden and the adults chatted in the living room, Alexander and Sophia snuck away to the lake dock. Under the starry sky, they danced slowly to the tune of an old song playing in their memories. "You know," Sophia said, resting her head on Alexander's shoulder, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that night at the restaurant." Alexander smiled, gently caressing Sophia's hair. "I believe we would have found each other somehow. Our love was meant to be." Sophia looked up, her eyes shining with love and a spark of mischief. "Even after all these years, you're still a hopeless romantic?" "Only with you, my love," Alexander replied, leaning in to give her a tender kiss. As they danced under the stars, memories of their life together passed through their minds like a movie. Their first meeting at the restaurant, the obstacles they faced, their wedding, May's adoption, Ethan's birth, Noah's arrival, the challenges and triumphs of building dreams, the laughter and tears shared over the years. Suddenly, a flash in the sky caught their attention. A shooting star crossed the firmament, leaving a bright trail in its wake. "Make a wish," Alexander whispered. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a smile. "I already have everything I could wish for," she said, hugging Alexander tightly. At that moment, they heard laughter and footsteps approaching. Their children and grandchildren were coming towards the dock, carrying a large birthday cake with lit candles. "Surprise!" they all shouted in unison. May stepped forward, holding the cake. "We thought you'd like to share this moment with all of us," she said with a smile. Surrounded by their family, Alexander and Sophia looked at each other, their eyes full of love and gratitude. Together, they blew out the candles as everyone applauded and cheered. As they shared the cake and laughed together under the stars, Alexander and Sophia realized that their love had not only transformed their own lives, but had created a legacy of love, compassion, and service that would continue long beyond their lives. Noah, always observant despite his young age, noticed the look his parents shared. "Grandma, Grandpa," he asked, "how did you know you were meant to be together?" Alexander and Sophia exchanged a knowing look before Sophia answered, "You see, my dear, true love isn't just about destiny, it's about choice. Your grandfather and I chose to love each other every day, through good times and bad. We chose to build a life together, a family, a legacy." Alexander nodded, adding, "And that choice, that decision to love unconditionally, is what really matters. It's what has kept us together all these years." May, with tears in her eyes, raised her glass once more. "To love that chooses, that endures, that builds and inspires. To Alexander and Sophia, our parents, our heroes, our example of true love." Everyone joined in the toast, their voices blending with the soft murmur of the lake and the chirping of crickets in the night. As the celebration continued, Alexander and Sophia remained silent for a moment, contemplating the reflection of the moon on the water. Their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in unison, they were a living testimony that true love knows no boundaries of class, age, or circumstance. Their story, which had begun with a chance encounter in a luxury restaurant, had blossomed into a saga of love, perseverance, and service to others. They had faced prejudices, family secrets, professional and personal challenges, but their love had prevailed, growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. Through their Building Dreams Foundation, they had touched the lives of thousands of people, providing homes, opportunities, and hope to those who needed it most. Their children, each in their own way, continued that legacy of love and service. As the night progressed and the party began to wind down, Alexander and Sophia found themselves alone once again on the dock. Dawn was beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pink and golden hues. "Look, my love," Alexander said, pointing to the sunrise. "A new day, a new beginning." Sophia smiled, leaning back against Alexander's chest. "Every day with you is a new beginning, a new chapter in our love story." And so, as the sun rose over the lake, bathing the world in its warm light, Alexander and Sophia remained embraced, their hearts full of gratitude for the love they had shared, the family they had created, and the legacy they had built together. Their story, which had begun as a modern Cinderella tale, had become an epic of love, perseverance, and transformation. They had proven that true love not only changes the people who experience it, but has the power to change the world around them. As they walked back to the house, hand in hand as they had done for more than 4 decades, Alexander and Sophia knew that their love story would continue to inspire future generations, a living testimony that true love, the kind that chooses, endures, and builds, truly knows no boundaries. The end.